Hi again, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon, I'm publisher Wetpixel, and I'm joined today by Alex. Hi
Hey
Alex.
Adamski, good to see you.
So one of the questions we get asked a lot on the forums is what's the best close-up lens? So I'm going to put Alex on the spot and ask him what he thinks the best close-up lens is.
Well, I think as you well know, it's a simple question without a straightforward answer, simply because there is no one lens that underwater photographers really want. Now, close-up lenses are something that we underwater photographers use a lot, and we use them in macro shooting to allow us to go into the realms of super macro. And close-up lenses come in various flavors, but they all kind of work in pretty much the same way, in that you screw them onto the front of your port, either on a flip diopter or directly onto the port or on a magnet. There's lots of ways to attach them. And what they allow us to do is they bring the minimum focus of our lens closer. So if you, on normal macro shooting, if you find you're always going too close to your subject to be able to focus anymore, you're in need of a close-up lens. And then you can buy them in different strengths. I think the first thing that is really important to say, though, is that actually most serious underwater photographers own several. Yeah. And the big mistake people typically make is they think surely a strong one is better than a weaker one. Yeah. And this one in my hand here is the one I probably use the most. And it's one of the weakest. It's the weakest one I have, yeah. But it gives very good image quality. It's worth about a +3 underwater. It says +5, but it's not underwater. But it's a really useful range. So one of the things that's also confusing about these close-up lenses is there's no standardized measure of strength. Some of them are described in diopter units, and this is a +5 diopter unit. But this is a +5 on land. When it goes underwater, it loses that. Yeah. Other ones are a +5 on land, and because of the way they're built, they don't lose that power underwater. Yeah. And then other ones, like the Nauticam SMC, CMC range, don't even quote a diopter strength. So the nomenclature is quite confusing, but it's good as an underwater photographer to have ones of different strengths. Sure. So I would never suggest just one. I would have others. Sure. Also, this is an area of the market that there's been a massive proliferation of brands over the last decade. And I certainly have not tried probably even 20% of the ones available. But the ones I have, and they're the ones I'm going to talk about today, are ones that I'm really, really happy with. Yeah. And I have to say, if I had a feeling there was something out there that was even better than I was using, I'd be swapping to it. Yeah. So these are my recommendations. They're not the only ones that do a really good job, but they're the ones that I own and I use. Yeah. So that's all I can talk about. You might have you've probably tried more than me, Adam, so you've probably got some things to say on that. Yeah. Yeah. I think to look at it historically, these kind of first started coming on the market in the sort of second half of the 90s. The first one that I was really available was called the Woody diopter. I think Woody Mayhew, a long time ago. I expect he's not done any diving for 20 years. That was the first kind of, it was a rubberized filter that pushed onto the front of a macro port. And it was a relatively weak lens, but it was very exciting at the time because it was the first time that people, instead of having to shoot stuff this big, could really get into the really tiny stuff with their SLRs. And that it was really exciting at that time, having that lens. I think in those early days of diopters were generally, the close-up lenses, were generally either bad or good. And I think what we've seen since then is a real increase in image quality. Yeah. Those early ones had plenty of power, but the corners of the frame used to get really horrible with chromatic aberration. They get blurry. You get really horrible fringing and things. And that's the area that we've seen a lot of progress on. We've got more power and much, much better image quality down the years. And I think another sort of line in the sand for me was in the second half of the 2000s when the subsea lenses appeared. There was a +5 and a +10. And these really moved the game on, both in terms of power and in terms of image quality. Yeah. And then since then, we've seen lots and lots of similar brands, similar ideas come onto the market with lots of power, lots of good image quality. And it's been an area of really big investment and lots and lots of interesting images. Yeah. And then I guess in the early 2010s, we started, Nauticam sort of came in with their products. And that for me was the second area. So we went from good and bad before the subsea to good and very good. And then I think when the Nauticam branded ones came on, we went having very good and really excellent optics. And then lots of people have sort of taken some of the ideas that Nauticam brought to the table with their lenses, and that's sort of the progression I've seen. So for about the last about 7 or 8 years, we've had really excellent options underwater, and Nauticam have increased their range over the years. So there's lots of those, and other people have produced ones that I think come very close to the Nauticam quality, but I've not tried them all, so I can't really say. So the main one that I use underwater, first of all, is this one, which is actually called a Fit +5, but it's only about strength of +3. But it's really, really useful. It actually is perfect for nearly everything. When you've just hit that minimum focus, you put this on. It still means you can shoot something if something's further away, but it's sort of perfect for sort of bigger nudibranchs, and the really small nudibranchs tend to make rubbish pictures anyway.
I think I have a CCAM version of the same thing, and I think sometimes there is a tendency to think that more magnification, and a lot of the time, really what you want, particularly when you're shooting with the longer focal length macro lenses like the 105s, is really all you want to do is reduce the working distance a little bit. And that's where these relatively weak diopters are a really, really useful tool, particularly with the longer focal length macro lenses. I've not shot the 150 Sigma. I know you use 150 Sigma, but certainly those types of lenses, these weak diopters are a really useful tool.
Yeah, and it's funnily enough, first of all, if you ask an underwater photographer, do you want the +5 or the +10, they always want the +10.
Yeah.
And what I've learned running workshops is I'll often go on a workshop and have a drawer full of these on the liverboard. And at the beginning of the trip, it's always the strongest ones that everyone's got on their cameras, everyone's borrowing. And by the end of the trip, all the strong ones are in the drawer, and all the weak ones are being borrowed by people. And I think they are really, really useful, the weak ones. And I've actually said to Nauticam several times, I want them to make a really brilliant quality +3 strength diopter. That would be my dream, and I wish they'd make one, because I think it's a real lack in the market. This is a good one, and the image quality is good, but you could definitely make this with even better image quality.
Yeah.
And I'd really like someone to make a really, really good +3. But they're all interested in making stronger and stronger ones. Now, the other one that I use all the time as well is this one, and this is a Nauticam SMC, and Adam and I were involved in the prototype testing of this. We had it on the Wetpixel 2013.
The first one, the first one, yeah.
First one of our workshops. And I actually took a picture with the prototype that was awarded in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and it showed for me what a groundbreaking piece of technology it was, because a relatively standard shot by today's measure was really groundbreaking at that time. And that's one of the exciting things about getting involved in trying these things, is you get access to the new capabilities first. The SMC as a full frame photographer is, for me, the perfect close-up lens. It's very strong, but it's because the optical design is really good. It's excellent image quality corner to corner. It doesn't mean that it maintains you a little bit more working distance because of the way the optics work. But it is really, really strong. And also, because it's very, very clear and sharp, the optics, the camera can autofocus through it really well. So in a lot of the early ones, you kind of had to do it all by rocking in and out. And you couldn't see that well until the lens shut down and then produced a sharp picture. This looks really great even when the lens is wide open when you're looking through it, because all SLR lenses and mirrorless lenses are open when you look through them, and then they shut down to take the picture. I think the other thing I would say about this lens is it is really strong, but it's a tough old thing. One flaw I think it does have is it's prone to flare. And if you shoot super macro with backlighting, you'll get little white blobs in the corners of the picture. And I think just flare wasn't part of the lens design. And so I tend to use it with this rubber cuff on it, which I keep just pushed back on it all the time. And when I need it, I just slide that forward underwater, and it makes a very nice lens hood for it.
That's a good idea.
And that's really good for this. Actually came from an Inon S2000 snoot.
Oh, there
and
you
it was
go.
Exactly the right size, and I just cut the snoot end off and stuck it on here, and it's been on here ever since. And I use this all the time.
Just speaking of Inon for a minute, I actually have the Inon UCL 67 here, and sorry, UCL 90. This is.
Hold it in front of your face a bit, Adam.
It's sorry, there we go. Here it is. Here, yeah. So, and again, this is a very similar power, I think, to the SMC1. The advantage is that Inon actually have managed to deal with the flaring issue. So I've used this deliberately with some very, very strong backlighting on subjects like hairy shrimps. And in actual fact, there's no flare. So optically, it's a great. It seems as good as the SMC. So it's a possible alternative to the SMC. Although I mean, obviously they're both very good, but they do seem to have dealt with the flare issue. So
yeah, the hairy shrimp shot that I did is in my book, and it's been in Nauticam catalogs, which I think was it was the first backlit hairy shrimp shot, which now no one ever shoots them without backlighting. That was shot with an SMC one. It was called an SMC at the time. There wasn't an SMC two, and that was using this collar to stop the flare. And I've been using that collar for that long.
It's a good tip.
Yeah, the other one that I do own but don't use so much is the Nauticam SMC two. Which is a stronger version still than the SMC one. And a lot of people go, oh, the 2 must be better than the 1. For me, borrow this lens, don't buy it. It's expensive. It's an incredible piece of engineering to be able to produce a lens that can produce such high magnification so sharp. But the reality is most of the time, there's not amazing pictures in the super macro realm. Actually, the SMC one generally takes more recognizable subjects with a more appropriate amount of depth of field to actually be able to see the subject. The SMC2, there are a few things that it does amazingly, but it's a very niche lens, and make sure that that niche is right for your photography before you spend the money on it. Definitely try and borrow one before you buy one.
The SMC2, you're talking about individual rhinophores or serrata on a nudibranch. The SMC1, you're talking about the head of the nudibranch. That's the sort of difference. And,
it's a really good.
And aesthetically, serrata on nudibranch, unless you're really into serrata or nudibranch, are not that interesting really for most people. So yeah.
Yeah, I call them serrata as well, but Bernard Picton, one of the UK's nudibranch experts, always calls them karata.
Oh, okay. Oops.
I don't think they're great. It's the same with. I suspect you can pronounce them correctly both. It's the same with cephalopods and cephalopods.
Ooh.
Most people call them cephalopods. I always call them cephalopods.
Oh, we disagree on cephalopods, but we agree on serrata.
Which is where it comes from, and we don't call that cephalonia. So anyway, I don't think it really matters. Both are actually technically correct. The other Nauticam lens that I'd really like to point out, which I also own, is the CMC one, which is a brilliant lens when used on crop sensor cameras, particularly with that 60mm thing. I don't use it very much because I don't shoot crop sensor, but I know you use this a lot, Adam.
Yeah, I use it a lot with the D500 and at 60mm. I mean, it's an interesting lens because Nauticam designed it really for using with compact cameras. But it's a really sweet spot with 60mm, and it just gives you that additional magnification, reducing the work. It's just a really good option with 60mm. Razor sharp again. I actually haven't experienced the flaring issues with that. I don't know whether there's a difference in the construction, but it certainly seems to tolerate more backlight than the SOC one does.
Okay.
But
I think it's important for us to say that, to stress again, I did say it at the beginning, that we're talking about the diopters we have and we know. There are lots of brands making really high quality diopters out there, close-up lenses. And just because these are the ones we're using, we feel confident talking about them. I've not tried them all. I know Adam's not tried them all. And there are some really good ones out there. So if you know someone who's got one that really recommends that one, these aren't the ones to necessarily the ones to go with. But I have to say that if I felt something out there was better, I would definitely use it. The other one, which Adam actually just lent me, and I was diving with this at the weekend, which I think is offers something completely different in this space, is Saga's Trio lens. And what this is a housing that screws on the front of your port as normal. And up here in the top are 2 different lenses. You've got a +5 and a +10. And you can slide either down. And this is a really nice system for cold water diving when you don't want to be fiddling with flips because your hands are really cold. And if you do a lot of cold water diving and you know that after half an hour your hands are going to be gone and not going to have much dexterity left, the ability to be able to change diopters as easily as that, you can just do it with the flat of your hand. You don't have to have much feeling in your fingers. So you have the option of having no close-up lens. You have a +5. You have a +10. Or you can slide both down together and have +15. And that gives you tremendous flexibility on one dive. And I think it makes the point that, although Adam's question is, what is the close-up lens to buy? The reality is that as a serious underwater photographer, you don't want one. You want 2, maybe 3, with different strengths to take with you on a dive, either on flips, either on mounts on your strobe arm so you can screw them off and screw them on, or in pockets in a pair of shorts or something with big cargo shorts with a big pocket in them or something like that, so that you've got that flexibility on the dive. So my answer to your question, Adam, is it's not one, as you well know. It's actually, and this product highlights it, it's actually the fact that you want several. And don't underestimate the importance of a really good quality weak one, because I think that is actually the one you tend to use almost the most. And for me, I use this, I would say, for maybe 40% of the pictures I take with close-up lenses. The SMC, that's the Fit Plus 5, which is only really a +2 or 3 underwater. Yep. Then I use the SMC for probably the other 50%, yep. So 40-50% each. Yep. And then the final few percent, I'm using this. Yep. So it's really, those two are doing almost everything. And the SMC2, the super strong one, hardly ever. Yep. There's plenty of trips where the weight of this I can't justify in my luggage and it stays at home. Yep. Or I bring it on the trip and I never use it. It sits in a BC pocket for a week. Yep. But so that's my answer.
Yeah, well, that's a very comprehensive answer, Alex. I think that probably covers most things. Macro images, I guess they can see them on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram's a great place. It's I try to write down what I've used with them, but sometimes I'm posting in a hurry, so I don't always manage it.
Yeah, great. Okay. So thanks very much, Alex. We'll see you soon, and thank you all for watching. Thanks again to our sponsor for this episode, which was Chris at Lembear. Please feel free to add comments or suggestions for future topics in the comments section and subscribe to the channel. Many thanks. I look forward to seeing you next time.